my right we have the Range Rover, to my left the Esprit and the Sprinter, and Tina is just out of shot. I'm working on the sheet metal brake, which is crucial to getting this thing done, and I am just as eager to get it done as you probably are to see it done. It is taking up so much space everywhere, in the Sprinter, in the shed. And speaking of which, if you think that shed is going to be your excuse to say, oh well, he still has somewhere to work, have a look at this. It took me half a day just to eke out enough room to get in there and fabricate a couple of small brackets. Soup is officially al fresco, and I gotta tell you, I'm feeling great for it, especially on days like today. If you have enough space to park your car, you have enough space to do some work on it, so get stuck in. Okay, this right here is seriously eating into my car time, so let's get straight into what it took to get this rolling and get it back on the drive. If there was a common theme that struck me running through the making of this episode, it was patience. The people I spoke to, the dealings I had, the work I tried to get done all the way through. I made mistakes, little bits and pieces happened, and I just realised it was all about time and patience and not rushing, even though I did rush, but I managed to get quite a bit done. So you saw me throw the trailing arm back on there. And then I realised that's not going to work that way, because I'm not going to be able to get the axle up to it and rotated enough to get it to link. So I dropped it back down and decided to attach the trailing arm to the axle first, then offer it up on the offside of the car to the chassis, and I was in much better shape then to lift the axle on the near side and get the captive trailing arm back on. That worked out okay. But I'd wasted time there because I hadn't really thought about what I was doing, and just a small amount of forethought and a bit of patience there would have saved me time in the long run. Anyway, that was the first instance. With the outer links all back on the axle, I turned my attention to that A-frame ball joint. Now, that whole issue with the rubber being the wrong one, well, it's going to be the wrong one for the time being, and maybe I'll end up just replacing the ball joint in its entirety. I turned my attention to the springs. They cleaned up kind of well, and I put their seats back on and then let the springs back onto the car too. All this is really, really simple stuff, and I debated about whether I needed to film it or not, but hey, this is part of the story. Plus, it does illustrate right here the gains you make from keeping a level head and just going at a nice pace rather than trying to push everything. So I put the near side shock back on, and then halfway through realised I hadn't put the inboard washer back in. So I put that back in and cinched everything up. Then I realised the washer was the wrong way round. So this is where it dawned on me I needed to slow down, stop trying to rush things and do it properly once rather than having to do it 3 times. Anyway, we're minus the anti-roll bar still, but this axle isn't going anywhere, so the wheels are going back on and the car is more or less ready to roll. Enough of that. With a few tyres pumped and a pal with a trailer roped in, thanks Paul, we were on the road. And I have to say, trailing the Range Rover, I was admiring the axle. Things look good. It hasn't looked this good in a long time. And the unit, well, it was starting to fill up before I was even out the door. So the Esprit followed in short shrift. And we were on the drive. So the first order of business, I wanted to get the Range Rover a little bit more weather sealed, if I can do such a thing when it's in this state of stripping. So I prepped and primed the rear inner quarter panels. And for once I went out and bought the primer that the paint supplier suggested I buy. So it's this nice thick grey metal primer, and I was able to turn my attention elsewhere. Yes, it's sheet metal brake time. This has been a long time coming. We are going to get this thing operational if it kills us. Now you're looking at the top of one of the piano frames, and I just wanted to show that they're curved. There's quite a bow in these. It's a product of them being in a very hot fire, I presume. There's nothing we're going to be able to do about that. But hey, this stand was never supposed to be, you know, down to micron tolerances. Anyway, I wanted to recess the top of each of these plates so that the folding bed sits into them, and when we slide pieces of metal in, there's no obstruction. So the first thing I did was just to clean off the top, make sure they were smooth, and then I offered the bed up. Now, another issue is that the way these angle irons are formed, there's a radius on the inner angle of them. It's not a 90-degree corner. There's a kind of a curve here, which we're going to either have to grind out or allow for in the frames, and I'm opting to allow for them in the frames. So if I take a little template of the inner section of the angle iron and measure the depth of it, I can recess the top of our piano frames. You see there's quite a step here. No good for sliding in big sheets of metal. So a little bit of a chalk mark. I cut and ground back each of the piano frames. This is the kind of stuff that time lapse was made for. A quick test fitting and we're not bad. This isn't terrible. Check the top. Not perfectly level, but this is all stuff we can go back to. And these are looking a lot more purposeful with these recesses in them. So I offered the bed up a second time, measure twice, cut once, but I wanted to make sure that all of these frames were in sync, because what I found is with piano frames, even ones that look identical, they never are. I don't know whether they were cast singularly in kind of disposable sand casting or whatever, but no two in my experience are ever quite the same. Now, these are the brackets that I had to clean the shed just to make. And you're about to see the worst welding I've ever done. I actually want these welds to break so that I can redo them. The mistake that I made here was trying to do these welds in time lapse. With steel this thick, there's nothing for it but to do the welds off camera all at once, keeping the heat going. Which is my way of explaining why you won't see some welding happening later on. Now, if only I had a 6-foot, 400 kilo drill press to do these piano frames in, but hey, we'll jerry rig our way through this and get these holes for the brackets drilled in our piano frames. Now, onto the handle for the sheet metal brake. And as I said before, I wanted to make a tip of the hat to Art Deco and just put some little flourishes on this thing so it was kind of pretty. And continuing the theme of patience, this is all grinder work, but as I'll talk about later on, I probably should have done this with a file, or at least finished it with a file, taking my time to enjoy the process. But it's so hard to do that these days, you know, you want everything instantly. Anyway, on we go. And I haven't shot the footage of me cutting out these sections for a brace for the clamping jaw. These are some of the leftover bits from the frames that we're using for the legs. So it's great, you know, I felt good using as much of those frames as possible. But before we get into linking these together and bolting them up properly, let's get this handle welded on to the folding leaf. And these welds are much healthier looking. I hope they're good. You know, I've talked to some people about this sheet metal brake. Let's just say that there might not be full confidence in these welds, but you know what? We're here to learn, so we'll see what happens. And with the handle on, I'm very happy. This thing kind of looks cool now. It looks like the thing I wanted to achieve, which is something that may still look kind of homemade, but it looks decent. It looks kind of like it was considered, because it was. So at the end of another day, that's how it stood. And I was getting very excited and very close to being able to test it for the first time. Now in this shot, the clamping jaw isn't fully clamped down, but you can still see there's slightly more light showing through between it and the bed in the middle than at the ends. And this is the bow that I've mentioned that I've kind of unwittingly engineered into the clamping jaw, and this is why we need the brace on the top. Okay, back inside. We need a bracket to link the two sides of the brace on top of the clamping jaw. I've hit it with this kind of tip of the hat to Art Deco, but again, I did this the quickest way I could with grinders and tools. But then halfway through I decided, let's get the file out and really just take our time with this, and I did. And I think it kind of shows. It's not finished. This is not a finished piece, but I did use the file on certain sections of it just to give it that nice smooth edit. And you know what? It does finish things so much more nicely. Okay, here's a case in point. The two sides of the brace on top, even though these frames were the same, they look the same, one's thicker than the other. There you are. So I cut that back, grounded a bit, and got them the same kind of thickness, and then offered up our bracket to see where we're at. Now here's a very bad habit of mine. I never think or bother to center punch my holes before I drill them with the drill press, and it shows. These two holes are not evenly spaced. They're not on the same axis, if you get me. Which is something that's always going to annoy me, probably to the extent that I'll remake this whole bracket at some point. Anyway, there you go. With this thing in, and with a nice piece of threaded bar let onto the clamping brake, it was time to test. And I gotta tell you, I was waiting for a number of things to happen here. A, I didn't actually think I was going to be able to physically lift this. B, I thought it was going to be very, very badly bowed, like unusably bowed. And C, I thought we were going to just have wells pop all over the place. But look what's happening here. Now, something I haven't mentioned actually, I weighed the big components of this before I made the handle and the top brace. I weighed the piano frame legs, I weighed the folding leaf and the bed as one piece, and I weighed the clamping jaw as one piece, and everything turned out to be 25 kilos. So we have certainly 130 kilos before the handle and the top bracing goes on, and I would say we're probably 140, 145 kilos, and there will be a little bit more as we add a few more bits and pieces. I want to put a step on this because I did, as you've seen just now, have to stand on it to stop it from lifting off the ground. But this is a 5-foot bend in a sheet of 1.25mm steel, and it's not perfect. It's very crisp at the ends, it does bow slightly in the middle, but it is usable. I can fix this with a mallet and probably a length of wood. And later on, I will fettle this machine. There are some places like the brace is giving too much. We can get more clamping power out of this brace for sure. It needs a better, more robust bracket up here to hold it all together. I have built a sheet metal brake that has a capacity of 5 feet of 1.25mm steel, and I would say that that is a win. I wanted to take this piece of metal I've just folded and tack it in to the boot floor of the Range Rover just as a token of let's get ahead here, but I was so happy, and it was so kind of late in the evening, the sun was dipping, that I just said, you know what, that'll do, pig. That Range Rover is so close to being done. I know it doesn't look that way, but all the panels and the doors and everything will jump onto it very quickly. There are only little niggles left to do, just small pieces of fabrication and tidying up, and it's just a case of bolting it back together. You saw how quickly the axle went back on. It's always so much fun. So expect big things in the next few episodes, and we'll get it out, and hopefully it will be our chariot for at least a couple of months. I'm itching to take you for a drive in that thing. It's one of those vehicles, one of those cars that there's nothing quite like it. You know, there's nothing that is quite the same driving experience as driving an old Range Rover Classic. Okay, we're gonna go hell for leather here, straight through a lot of things. The first thing is, this is a Krypton engine tuner. It is something that the internet is kind of in two camps about, but nevertheless, Graham Folkard, one of our patrons, got in touch to say he wants to give this a new home. So if you're interested in this, if you would like it for your very own, get in touch and we'll try and hook you up with it. Okay. The only person I'm going to talk about in this episode is a guy called Josh Westwood, and Josh got himself a 78 Ford Transit Auto Sleeper, and it is so cool. It is so standard in its kind of camperishness and pressed steel wheels, kind of almost wobbly web wheels, and cool little touches like somebody put an auto glide, electric driver's window, but none on the passenger side. If it was me, I'd put it on the passenger side, so when you're on the continent and you run into a toll, the window's already down before you get over to hand the lady the money. Anyway, the reason I wanted to send Josh the kit is almost as a thank you for championing Ireland. He has taken a big trip through Ireland and documented it all in a Retro Rides thread. In fact, when I was shooting the link on the Connor Pass a couple of episodes ago, Josh may well have passed by. We may have passed each other unknowingly. Anyway, the link will be in the description to Josh's thread on Retro Rides, and do have a look. He's taken some really, really cool photographs and taken in some of my favourite places in Ireland. So if you ever thought you were going to come here, it's a nice thing to check out and see what's what. Okay, 21 episodes ago, I promised you I would go back to Sid, the man with the 131 Mirafiori, and check out his classic Toyota Celica. Well, I did, and here it is. You know, there are some people that you love to talk to because of what they know, and others you love to talk to because of what they've done. And yet more you like to speak to because of the car they have or the stable of cars that they keep. Well, with Sid, it's all three. Coming from an engineering background and having taken 3 of his own cars literally from rags to riches, he has plenty of stories to tell and knowledge to give. But one of the coolest things that happened on the day turned out to be a mistake I'd made. I'd left the camera plate for my car rig at home. And so Sid made me one. And while he was at it, he said something that struck a chord, and it's why files were on my radar all the way through this episode. When I asked him, would we use a grinder to put the dovetail edge on this plate, he said no. No fitter would do that with a grinder. Well, as it turns out, we threw a bit of everything at it. Files, grinders, the TIG welder, and a spot welder, which was all great fun for me. And I felt like I came away with horizons broadened. Anyway, we got the camera plate built, the camera mounted on the car, and out we went for a spin. Right, go on, so tell me. Right, I don't know a thing about these Celicas.
What do you want to know? This is my 12th one of these.
Right.
And the last
12th?
One, yeah, the last one I would have had in the mid-80s. And I didn't think there was any of these left. So I was on the mooch for one. And this came up for sale. We went to look at a couple before this one.
Right.
And they were all rubbish. Not as described, rotten rubbish. So this came up for sale in Tala. Early 2000. Mum was looking $5 grand for it. Needed a deposit for a house, so he said. And he ended up buying the ticket. We made up, paying Matt Murphy. But he was great. He bought and sold cars, so we got the car for £2,670 a month.
Down from 5?
Down from 5, yeah.
That was
he dropped from 5 to 3 very quick. But Matt wasn't good enough for Matt, he kept going. So that was...
And what kind of money was that for the car? I mean, what condition was it in?
Oh, it was fully restored, as he said. I had a set of super slot, upper slot alloy wheels.
Okay.
And it was painted blue, metallic blue. It was lovely. Had new doors, new wings, new bonnet. And within the 2 years of driving it now and again, the rust started to bubble out. So, especially under the back window. So sourced quite a bit of rust on it that had to be cut out and replaced with steel, and the wheel arches were very bad. So I ended up, I cut them off altogether, and I got that TRD kit from California, from Toy Sport in California, which is the four arches in the front spoiler. But they were all off a TA22. This is a TA23. It's a longer and wider car, and it just didn't fit. But I made them fit. The car is 40mm wider, and this, you can see on the spoiler, you wouldn't know. It's all done right. And
so are the arches cut high then in behind those?
The arches are cut high so I can put the big wide wheels.
Yeah.
And without the suspensions fitted, we were jacking the wheels up and down, so that made sure there was no issues.
Go clearance.
All clearance, plenty of it. And then she got the new adjustable shocks all around, and T3 control arms, 4 links on the back, full stainless exhaust system. Engine didn't need to be rebuilt. It's only got 29,000. That's genuine. But see, a lot of history, stories I heard about it. It got crashed when it was a year old, and the guy was sick, and he threw it in the shed, stuck it up on pallets, and it stayed in the shed for 22 years.
Really?
Yeah.
And did you see signs of crash damage?
Oh no, it was damaged at the back quarter panel. But when his nephew got it, who's the guy I bought it off, he just repaired the quarter panel, but he didn't do it right. I think it was driver's quarter panel. And so when Jack, we didn't know what colour we were going to do the car. All the bodywork was prepped, and Mr. Duffy, Jared Duffy, that owns Duffy's Coach Bodies, was after doing an ML Jeep for his wife, and it was a blue one, and he painted it base coat and lacquer black, just black, no metallic, no nothing. And when that came out of the spray booth, I went to Jack, that's the colour I want, Celica, and that's the colour she wanted.
But tell me about this. I don't know anything about this model.
This is a TA23 ST, Irish car.
Okay.
4-speed, 1600, 1588cc, twin carburetors, and I upgraded it to a 5-speed. And the 4-speed car is a 3.9 to 1 final drive.
Okay.
The 5-speed should be a 4.1 to 1. So it loses, when you put it into fifth, it kind of loses a bit. But I've sourced an axle, it's sitting in the shed, and it's on the to-do list to change that over so we can get the. But I don't use it that much, so.
What real world difference is that going to make?
Just makes, when you put it into fifth gear, instead of doing that, she'll actually pull on. It's just not geared right. Gives us a bit more acceleration.
Was there an option of a 5-speed when this was built?
Well, I'm sure there was, but I don't know about Ireland.
Poverty spec as usual.
Yeah, well, we didn't. Poverty spec was it was an LT and an ET. This is an ST, so, and then it was a GT. There was 4 of them, but we got the second best. There's no GTs came to Ireland. She's got GT badges on her because I like them.
Yeah, you don't worry about that kind of stuff.
I don't care. This car, in reality, if it had been left, it would have been swept away. It would be gone, dead. Because
you do run across people who do get very finicky about that kind of
thing. Sure, people are falling out with me over the Fiat having Toyota parts in it.
And was the inspiration from this the Toyota parts?
The limited slip diff, yeah, which this doesn't have, but I could fit a limited slip diff into this easily enough if I wanted it. But I've massive wheels in the bag, it's fine.
Now as an ST, this was a 1600, was there a 2-litre option or was that just a GT?
The 2-litre was the twin overhead cam 18RG, which came in the RA28, which was the liftback version of this car that Brendan McCormick and Drogheda owns. But as this car, I'm not sure whether it was a 2TG, which was a 1600 twin cam, was the forerunner to the 4AG that's in the twin cam Corollas, you know. But this is bog standard. It's grand, nothing done to it. Just saved. All the rust cured. Loads of wax in every cavity. Little things like electric windows.
She's rose jointed though, right?
Rose jointed, yeah.
You can feel that. bad. It's still
No.
comfortable, but you can feel the direct
Yeah.
translation of the road, which is a good thing.
And you have 235 50 tyres on the back, 13-inch, and 215s on the front, so they're pretty wide. So it's a steering box as opposed to a steering rack. It's not bad. You don't need power steering.
Tell me about the stainless bolts.
Yeah, got the other stainless bolts of A2 and a number on them. I ground all that off and polished every head. So I was doing that at lunchtime in where I worked. I might do 10 every lunchtime, maybe 20, and then I just done boxes of them. I bought them, I didn't steal them.
How long did that take you?
Well, it took quite a while, yeah.
You were doing it for weeks, probably.
Weeks and weeks, yeah. Not
Why?
every day,
Why?
yeah.
Just for the aesthetic
Because
of it?
I wanted stainless. I liked the polished heads at the time, and I got the ones, the domed nuts that are holding on the strut. I don't know what the thread is, but you weren't able to buy it off the shelf at the time. It's a fine thread, and we got that made. So they worked out. They were expensive enough at the time to get done.
You were a fitter, right?
I'm a fitter, yeah. Time served.
Well, tell me about serving your time, because what did that entail?
Well, I served my time in S&S, which built machines that made corrugated cardboard boxes, amongst other things. Boarding them on the peat harvesters, boarding them on the peat wagons. There's a big massive machine shop in it. So we were trained basically how to strip things down to a fine tolerance, put them back together, bearings and shafts, all that type of crap. Machining, turning, milling, welding, all aspects of welding, all to a high standard. So we got great training. The money at the time wasn't great, as opposed to people, apprentices in the Harp and the cigarette factory, Peach and Carroll's and Cardinal Moore, the other brewery. They were on a lot more money, because we used to go on block release to the college in Dundalk to do your trade exams every year. You had 3 months, and they'd all be saying, they're all in one class saying, how much are you getting? And I think the most, we started off on £18 a week, and they were like getting 30, and then the second year was 36, and then 56, and the most, when I was finished, 4th year apprentice, I was getting 96 home with me, and they were getting like 250 at the time. Honestly, more than double.
Now, you said that they got you to make a vice.
Yeah. That was one of the projects, make a little hand vice. I think that was in Foss, or it could have been in college. I'm sure it's still floating around somewhere, because I don't throw things away.
What did you make it out of?
It was all made out of mild steel. It would have been milled from a block of steel, and then all the screw parts would have been torn down and on a lathe, and a bit of bench fitting on it, making everything fit, you know.
Speaking of bench fitting, when we were making up that camera plate there, you said to me, we won't use any grinders, we'll use files.
Yeah.
Proper bench fitting.
Proper bench fitting, yeah.
Well, with a bench fitter now, he wouldn't, worth his weight, he wouldn't use a grinder if he could help it.
If he could help it, he'd be able to use the file. He'd have it cut properly, and he didn't need to take much off it.
Now I see. Yeah.
We would have even worked to finer tolerances than that using scrapers, like to thousandths of an inch.
What to scrape? Just literally scraping?
Literally scraping off a whisker of metal. We worked in thousands. The machines we worked on were all AF, American Fine measurements, you know. And pre-metric is the same. We weren't used to metric, but that came later, you know.
Has it picked up any awards? Because I can imagine it would.
No, it hasn't.
But that'd be more you not putting it in for them, wouldn't it?
Well, I wouldn't have it to too many shows. I don't like the hands-on approach with the ill-mannered kids and the ill-mannered parents that don't put manners in their kids in the first place. So it's a bit of respect. A lot of work went into this thing. It took a few years. A lot of money.
Oh, the other thing that I noticed straight away was the little rubbers for the bonnet slam.
Yeah, they were new. There's none on it. I ended up paying £80 sterling for them, which was stupid money.
And how many are there?
There's 4 of them, so they were 80 for all.
So it's twin, would have been twin carb from the factory?
Twin carb from the factory, twin Asians.
That's the brand?
That's the brand make of them. I don't know what size, 36s I think.
And they're downdraft?
They're downdraft, yeah. Downdraft carbs. Nothing but trouble at the start. But another Celica for braking, a later model, a TA40, and it had much the same problem with carburetors. When I bought it 40 carbs and the 5-speed box, and the 5-speed box didn't fit for some reason. I can't really remember why, but I sold it on for more than I paid for the car, so I had everything free. And the carburetors, when I bolted them on, they couldn't tune them. Same. Similar problem, only in a different place. So this is a queer one now. I got in touch with a guy called Mike in New Zealand through a forum, and he said he was putting a new engine and different fuel system on his car. He was upgrading to like a fuel injection, and he phoned me and he said, listen, vroom, 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 vroom. Listen, I'm taking these carburetors off now. Listen to them. Revved it up to the last and had it ticking over. He said, they're perfect. And anyway, how much do you want for them? I don't want anything for them, he said. They're yours if you pay the freight. So they cost me €106 to get them delivered from New Zealand to Ireland. And I bolted them on, boom, and that's to this day.
I'm glad that you said, and not me, about the mirrors underneath the bonnet.
That was when I was a gassing.
You're gonna have to explain what a gassing is now.
I tell you what I was. As a young man, I was at I don't know what show I was at in Castlewellan, Oregon, and I see a Volkswagen of some description, a real fancy thing, all done up, fancy paint, and I had the mirror under the bonnet, and I asked the guy, what's that? Mirrored stainless. It's like, Jesus, I'll do some of that. I was in my late 30s, so it's a long time ago.
I wouldn't call that a gassing now.
Oh yeah, still a gassing, George. Still only 16.
And you're not going to take it off, but you wouldn't do it again, is that it?
No, I wouldn't do it again. No, you see, it's too heavy. But it still looks well. A good clean and polish would be nice.
And a disco ball.
On a disco ball, yeah. Oh, there was nearly disco lights going underneath it.
You mean fluorescent?
You know them from Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
And this dash is mirrored stainless. I sent the dash over to a company in Barrie in Canada, because they were producing left-hand drive ones, and I was talking to them on the phone, and I goes, well, is it a mirror image? And we don't know. Send us over a dash if you can, which I did, and got lost in the post. I went to a place called Barrie in South Africa. 6 months later, I got to them in Canada, and they done the drawings out, and that's what I got back. Yeah, 100 quid. Not bad.
So what would she have been original horsepower?
Oh God, you have me. I'm not sure.
Can't have been a lot.
Would it be
in the 70s and a 1600?
16? Would it be 80 bhp maybe?
You have a Mini in the back of the shed.
I have an Austin 7. It's badges in Austin 7.
The real thing, very early.
Yeah, it's the same age as myself. That's why I have it. 1963. In fact, it's older than me. It's April. This is April 76. 1st of April. Imagine being the proud owner of this, buying it brand new and registering it.
The mirrors on this aren't standard,
no.
And the axle you have on the Mirror Fury is
it's not.
Is a Celica axle.
It's a Toyota Corolla E.25 twin cam axle, and the brakes on the 131 are ST202 Gen 6 Celica. So you have proper brakes. When I say it's not all the brakes, they're incorporated
But that's a culture that, let's say, certainly in America, you do whatever you want to your car. In fact, you're expected to change things on your car.
Yeah.
But here, we're probably more, the majority here seem to be purists, right?
And then they won't talk to you. Which is why, see, this is what annoys me. To be a purist, oh, your 131's not standard. Well, if it was standard and original, it would be in a bucket. It would be finished, gone. So it hasn't got the original panels because they were all rotten. So I saved something. And I done it to my own spec. I built it. I built the car. I restored this. I didn't build this one. I built the 131. This had a lot of, all the welding was all up top, all around the roof was bad on this. And sills, the floor is perfect, where in the Fiat there was no floor. I have 2 little fog lights hidden. You see the stainless mesh that's in underneath it. It's a stainless grill. There's a gap in the spoiler between the bumper and the spoiler, so that didn't look right. So I put a stainless steel grill in it, and I built in 2 wee fog lamps, and they're out of a Corolla G6, 99 G6 Corolla, and they're wired up here. They're also wired to the headlights as well, with on-off switch here, and it comes on here. Let's see, ESP panel. That was only on the American models.
ESP.
I don't know what it even means.
This is more valuable than the Mirror Fury, is it?
I reckon so.
More, it's less niche though.
It would be. There wouldn't be many of these things left.
And I would say the Japanese would probably have it back, wouldn't they?
The Japanese have a lot of these tucked away in Japan, and they're starting to let them go because they're fetching big money. So you see an odd one appearing in the country. Jap spec one.
Yeah. And is there big differences?
No, there wouldn't. You'd have silly little differences. Wouldn't be much.
So, what is the market for this car now?
Market value?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're being cagey.
Well, the last one I seen sell in the UK went for 36,000 sterling.
36,000?
Yeah, green one last year.
Obviously in great nick.
Restored.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was restored. But then this isn't everyone's liking because it's got the big arches, the big wheels, the stainless pipe, the lowered springs, and then there's other people who would love it.
Who'll get them? Who'll get your cars?
I have to make a will, give it to the wife. She can do what she wants when I'm gone.
And what's it take to become your wife?
There's only one Carol. No, I don't know, George. Maybe in 10 years, if I'm still around in 5 or 10 years, I might have no interest in this and sell it. You know, I don't know.
But you don't have a will. You want to get that sorted.
Yeah, get the will made.
Remember the Kiora ad? I'll be your dog.
I'll be your dog, yeah.
Leaning against an unfinished sheet metal brake when you've probably just seen it finished in this episode is not going to do much for my continuity. But like I said, it's been disjointed the last couple of months because of the unit move, and we are moving into a phase of very great stability, I hope, and we're going to push forward and finally complete some of the projects. I dare say the Esprit is better off out here than it was in the unit. The unit was actually very damp, and when I caught a glimpse of certainly the front suspension on the Esprit when I had it up on the trailer, it has deteriorated greatly in the last couple of years, which is not good. But look, we're doing a full restoration anyway. If this happens to be your first visit to Soup, please do go back, check out the other episodes. There have been some very cool people, what I hope are cool projects, and some very, very cool cars. So get your head around where we've been and you'll know where we're going. Okay, do like and subscribe. Dislike if you want. Let me know why in the comments, or tell me what you do like in the comments. I'm all ears, and it is all for the greater good anyway. Any engagement is good engagement, and it's great to hear from you. So, to my patrons, Tom Childs and David Brody, gents, great to have you on board. Relieved, I have to say, to have you on board. Thank you, and I will see you soon. Until I do, good luck.
Can't say that.
Can't say that.
Can't say that on the radio.
Go on, give out to me about the welder.
Yeah, your welder is fine for doing body work, but when you were welding that diff, oh yeah, I agree. I wish you had pick up the phone, come out and use me take. You could use it. I'll show you how to use it, and we really got a sealed weld. There wasn't a leak because you have a gas going in, and the gas cleans it. As you're welding, it cleans all the impurities. So that's why you're getting leaks, because you've no gas. It's gas as well, and the porous.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I noticed that.
No.
But you're not a grumpy.
I'm not grumpy. I am a grumpy bastard.